there are someone right this moment, somewhere in the world, that is playing their music. It may not sound like music that we understand, but to each other.
They said it was just a formality. Cut the rusted lock, log the contents, ship the boxes to a climate-controlled archive, and move on. But the moment the door rolled up, dust curling in the strip lights, every voice in the room went quiet. On the top shelf sat a plain banker's box, yellowed at the edges, stamped with a fading code, RC Embassy, 1976. No fanfare, no velvet. Just a rectangle of cardboard that felt heavier than it looked, like it had been holding its breath for 30 years. We cracked the lid, and the first thing we saw wasn't a gold record or a rhinestone jacket. It was a reel, neat as a dinner plate, with a label typed in the kind of stern font you only see in government forms and TV control rooms. Keep instrumental, break long. The music must breathe. Underneath, a stack of letters, some typed, some scrawled in midnight ink, hinted at a Roy Clark the public never fully met. Not just the broad grin from Hee Haw, not just the lightning hands that made banjo strings sound like a jet turbine. The vault suggested a strategist, a negotiator, a builder who mapped out how America would watch country music, not merely hear it. What follows is not a gossip hunt. It is a journey through a life engineered with metronome precision and showman's charm, revealed one artifact at a time, touring cue sheets from places no one expected to sing along, syndication notes that read like battle plans, sketches for stages in a small Missouri town before the billboards moved in, and receipts for kindnesses he never bragged about. Each box is a room in a house Roy Clark designed quietly, the way only a master does, so the doors feel obvious after you've walked through them. Tonight we will open those doors. We'll step into the moments where laughter hit a lever, where a cornpone punchline protected a blistering solo, where a handshake settled a war no camera ever caught. And before we're done, you'll see why the people in that warehouse froze. The vault doesn't rewrite who Roy Clark was. It sharpens the focus, lifts the faders, and lets the music breathe, just like he ordered. The postcard version of Roy Clark starts with a grin and ends with a punchline, but the vault opens on graph paper. Notebooks, the thin kind you buy at a 5 and dime, packed with cramped handwriting and ruthless order. Page after page is a battlefield of tempos and targets. Monday, right-hand economy at 90, repeat to 110. Tuesday, flat 7, chromatic approach, no buzz above the 12th. There are tiny metronome drawings in the margins, like little alarm clocks, circled whenever a tempo was conquered. Every box ticked isn't bravado. It's a contract with himself. You can picture the kid long before television knew his name. Military brat roots, hand-me-down instruments, sitting by a radio and reverse engineering the songs he loved. The vault's early pages are not starry or sentimental. They're mechanical. He's measuring finger trajectories, inventing shorthand for pick angles, and coaching a future version of himself to be calm on command. One note reads, "Smile at bar 8, which sounds cute until you realize he's practicing how to look effortless right when the part gets brutal. That smile wasn't just a charm, it was choreography. Tucked beside the practice books is a thread of correspondence with small regional television producers who barely had budgets and even less patience for musicians' demands. Roy, not yet famous, is pushing for multi-camera coverage on instrumentals. He sketches wide shots for the laugh lines, then insists on tight over-the-shoulder angles when the right hand does something worth teaching. It's bold for a newcomer, telling television how to see him. But it also reveals the blueprint. He's not merely playing the tunes, he's designing the viewer's experience. He knew the break wasn't a pause in the comedy, it was the thesis. There's a carbon copy of a tiny contract addendum, smoked at the edges like it lived too close to an amplifier. In blue ink, a clause about syndication leverage sits like a nail in oak. The right to preserve instrumental segments as is, if the show ever leaves the network and goes wide. Imagine writing that before your name lights any marquee. Imagine betting on reruns no one had conceived could run the world. Amid the engineering and legal foresight, a softer artifact, a Polaroid of a grimy stage, cable tape everywhere, and a boyish Roy in a suit that looks borrowed. On the back, a simple caption, "Learn to love the bad monitor." It's half joke, half creed. If the tools fail, the plan doesn't. Because the plan is bigger than tonewood and tubes. It's a system. Build speed, protect the solo, shape the shot, smile when it hurts, and make sure the music breathes when it finally reaches the living room. The joke was the wrapping paper. The product was distributed. When Hee Haw first hit living rooms, critics treated it like a hay bale with a laugh track. Cornfields, quick cuts, and knee slappers that landed as softly as a feather pillow. But buried under the punchlines was a machine that redefined how music got to Main Street. And Roy Clark was not just riding it, he was oiling the gears. The Vault's paper trail reads less like a scrapbook and more like a war room. Arrows, circles, margins crowded with math. This wasn't whimsy. This was a syndication playbook. One manila folder is packed with market sheets from stations in places you don't hear in Hollywood meetings. Tulsa, Peoria, Scranton, each with a little circle in Roy's hand and a note beside it. Untapped ad blocks. He underlines the phrase barter inventory and adds CPM figures with a carpenter's neatness. You can practically see him doing the calculus. If affiliates get the right ad flexibility, the show isn't a liability, it's a local gold mine. That's how you survive a cancellation. That's how you turn a niche into a network without a network. Another memo draft, typed hard enough to dent the ribbon, argues for the heresy that made Hee Haw immortal. Keep the instrumental breaks long. Not longer than comedy will bear, longer than television thinks it should allow. The break is the brand, the memo says in pencil under the type, and under that, promos will sell the pickin'. It's a dare and a strategy. Let the joke hook them, then let the music keep them. For every critic who thought the show was a costume party, there were millions who stuck around to watch hands fly. Those hands needed room. Roy made sure they had it. The politics were delicate. Letters in the file suggest that label reps wanted their singers on the A-stools. Producers wanted faster sketches to goose ratings, and some musicians worried the show's country corn mask would swallow their craft. Roy, if these notes are to be believed, stood at the crossroads with a diplomat's grin and a musician's spine. There's a series of margin comments that read like traffic signals. Give them the novelty here. Protect the solo at Mark II. Trade a chorus for camera time on the turnaround. He's not just saving himself. He's carving out oxygen for pickers the country hadn't heard yet. Two sticky notes stand out. One on a rundown sheet. Don't cut the third chorus. Camera 2 needs the right-hand shot. Another slapped on a cue card for a sketch. Move gag to tag. Music first. It's not that the jokes didn't matter, they were the sugar. But Roy knew what was underneath. A broadcast cathedral for virtuosity, disguised as a barn. At the back of the folder, a thin envelope is tagged in felt tip, Owens Clark, placement. Beside it, a yellow post-it, older than some of the tapes, with a polite warning in 4 words. Open last, please. You tilt the envelope and hear the soft slide of paper inside, as if a decision from decades ago is still shuffling, waiting to be read. Whatever's in there isn't a punchline. It's leverage, and the reason the music kept breathing. People called it natural talent because that's easier than admitting how much work it takes to look like lightning. The vault refuses the myth. Inside is a cassette series, cheap plastic, hand-labeled in block letters, each with a number pair, 100, 145. Click tracks tick like nervous clocks. At 100 beats per minute, the right hand is a sewing machine. At 120, the tone thins. At 132, he stops, rewinds, and mutters something about tone drift, then punches back in. There's no mystique here, only discipline. Increase by small increments, stabilize the sound, only then move the needle. Speed wasn't a gift, it was a warranty. Beside the tapes are Polaroids of stage rigs, each annotated like a crime scene. Pickup heights measured in eighths of an inch, string gauges swapped for brightness under television lights, bridge saddles nudged to keep intonation sweet where the cameras like to live. One card is titled Bright for TV, Warm for Vinyl, with 2 columns of tiny adjustments. Mic distance, EQ notches, how much to favor the bridge pickup when the room eats treble. He's building 2 versions of himself depending on the medium, so the living room gets clarity and the record gets depth. That's not vanity, that's engineering. There's a page of grids that looks like graph paper from a math class. It isn't. It's cross-picking patterns mapped as if they were roadways. Arrows mark economy of motion, with notes like thumb downstroke steals travel and index floats less elbow. Another sheet breaks down hybrid picking. Pick for the downbeat, middle finger snaps the off, ring finger fills the triplet ghost. Then, in the margin, smile at the hard spot. He's conditioning his face to project ease exactly where the part tries to break him. A thinner folder holds television choreography, not dance, camera. Sketch wide on the gag, cut tight for turnarounds, then over the shoulder for the right hand. He knew high-speed runs turn to visual soup if you stay wide. The audience needs to see the mechanics to believe them. He's not just preserving his own hero shot. He's teaching America how to read a right hand. In a medium that flattens nuance, he's writing a language for it, and the banjo, supposedly a novelty prop, gets its own war plan. Short phrases that hit hard on TV speakers, rests shaped like punctuation, space to let transients pop instead of smearing into laughter. A note taped to a banjo head says simply, "Tune for lights." Heat shifts pitch. He accounted for it. Pressed under all this is a manila folder with a red pencil title, Soviet Tour, State Requests. Paper clips, a Cyrillic address book, and a customs declaration stamped in a color that still looks wet. The fastest hands in American television were apparently headed somewhere no one expected, into a room where speed would have to speak a different language. You don't pack a banjo for the Soviet Union by accident. The folder marked Soviet Tour, State Requests is stiff with paper clips and acronyms, a paper snowstorm of itineraries, venue specs, and approvals with stamps that look like they were swung by a hammer. A typed schedule with Cyrillic street names that bend like winter branches. Beside it, a cue sheet for an opening number that feels like a handshake. Bright, simple, chord changes clean enough to translate without words. In the margin, a pencil note. Lights on bar 3 blind, drop 10%. It is not the sound of a cowboy stepping into diplomacy. It is a professional tightening the bolts before the bridge holds weight. The first performance reads like a controlled detonation. The notes say the hall was full 20 minutes early. Ushers walking the aisles with faces that did not smile but did not frown either, as if emotion were a border you crossed only with permission. There's a postcard copy. Food foreign, people warm, applause colder than hotter, and a running tally of what landed. The laughter is light at the jokes, Then surprising loudness when the right hand starts moving. Someone, maybe Roy, underlines, "They clap on 1 and 3, and adds a little wink of an arrow to lean the groove there. Adapt or be admired from a distance. He adapts. The vault keeps peeling back details. A diplomatic thank you on stiff paper notes packed houses, an impromptu instrument demo backstage, and a private reception where conservatory students asked technical questions and practiced English. Do you alternate your thumb even when the accent is on the and of 2? The reply is sketched in diagrams. Thumb here, snap there, muting here. You can feel a different kind of soft power humming, an exchange that doesn't fit into a press release but leaves fingerprints on memory. A second cue sheet bears a modest battlefield scar, a coffee ring around the word encore. Taped to it is a skinny strip of paper, the kind you cut from the end of a roll, labeled odd off key joy high. The scrawl beneath explains everything. They sang the chorus phonetically. Imperfect vowels, perfect timing, every voice shimmying toward the downbeat like a train finding track. Who needs a shared language when you have a shared 2 and 4? The personal cost hides in the margins. Notes about jet lag and strange hotel plumbing, a caution on instrument humidity, a reminder to retune between songs because heat shifts pitch faster than politics shift policy. Then, a softer line. Miss home. Love this crowd. That's the Roy the public knew, finally visible in private, unpretentious, amused, grateful, quietly moved by strangers who loved the music more than the mask it wore. At the back of the folder sits a customs declaration, stamped so hard the paper bruised, stapled to a reel-to-reel box, scrawled with 3 words that make the room go still. Duet, unreleased. There's no track list, just a date, a location, and 2 initials that don't match Roy's. Tape is heavier than paper. It holds more than memory. Somewhere in that Moscow air, 2 hands met on a melody and left a secret rolling, magnetic and patient, across 30 years of silence. If Nashville was the broadcast tower, Branson was the proving ground. Long before tour buses painted the Ozarks with billboards, the vault says Roy Clark was running numbers that looked less like showbiz and more like site planning. The first artifact is a stapled prospectus draft, map grids, ingress arrows, and a penciled note that reads, "Turn radius for a 45-foot coach, widen lane by 2 feet." That's not a headliner's fantasy. That's a builder's eye. Before Branson became a pull-off for every interstate family and every retired picker with a merch table, Roy was calculating bus angles and choke points. Get the buses in, get the fans in, get the band in. Show business is still a business. Across the page, a rectangle sketched as a stage with dimensions beside it, and a box labeled merge lane, where signing lines would snake toward a table. He's planning bottlenecks like a highway engineer. The margins are full of seasonal math. Shoulder months, feature locals, spotlight young pickers. If summer is the headliner, winter is your farm team. Rotate them. Keep the town talking. Build an ecosystem, not a shrine. Then, a letter of intent that looks suspiciously early, months ahead of competing venues, if the dates mean what they seem to mean. It's courteously worded, almost shy in tone, but the terms are Flint, favorable lease windows, production autonomy, and a clause protecting instrumental showcase time regardless of ticket package changes. Translation: Branson would not be a photo op. It would be a sanctuary for the real thing. The same preacher who argued on Hee Haw that the break is the brand was about to carve that creed into local bedrock. The vault supplies a playbook for the money the audience doesn't see. A sheet titled Meet and Greet Units breaks down margin on bundled CDs, postcards, and a photo slip upsell. Another page lists quiet comps, Tickets held for pickers' families, school music programs, veterans groups, each with a maximum cap and a handwritten "Don't brag" in the corner. You can almost hear him coaching a young manager. Generosity is part of the architecture, but it belongs backstage. There's mentorship everywhere. A yellow pad with names in 2 columns, ready now, and give them 6 months. Beside each, a quick note, tone but timid. Right hand's there, needs stagecraft, fiddles fire, pair with comic. The Branson Roy envisioned isn't a one-man statue, it's a workshop where talent rotates through spots until the town feels like a living lineup card. Tucked underneath, a thin tax folder rubber-banded to a smaller envelope marked Scholarships, Anonymous. The tax file is stamped Hold for Counsel, the sort of preemptive caution grown-ups use when they risk their own balance sheets to shore up someone else's dream. The little envelope is lighter than it looks. Paper can be heavy with intent. Whatever's inside doesn't want applause, it wants a future. When the last box is emptied and the air settles, what remains isn't a scandal. It's a system, humming. The notebooks teach you how the lightning was made, one metronome, click at a time. The memos explain why an old joke show still crackles in memory. Because someone fought for the part that mattered, the wordless minute when music says more than a punchline. The tour files prove a banjo can cross borders, politics can't, and that joy, sung phonetically, still finds pitch. The Branson papers show a headliner thinking like a city planner, widening lanes so buses and beginners and families and fiddles all arrive on time. And those quiet checks, the anonymous scholarships, the "Don't brag" scribbled in the corner, they tell you who Roy Clark was when no one was looking. Open the Owens-Clark placement envelope and you don't find a feud, you find a philosophy disguised as logistics. Protect the space where the music breathes and everything else can move around it. That was the through line. From a kid drilling right-hand economy, to a television star diagramming camera shots, to a cultural envoy sketching set lists for strangers, to a Branson architect designing seasons like symphonies, Roy Clark kept building rooms for sound. Maybe that's why everyone froze when the vault door rolled up. Not because they expected ghosts, but because they sensed a living blueprint. You can copy a grin, you can mimic a joke, but a life arranged so the right notes have air? That's rarer. That's architecture. So we close the vault the way we found it. Careful hands, quiet voices, knowing we haven't changed Roy Clark's story. We've just turned up the faders on the part he made sure would outlast us. The break, the breath, the music.